Hi, this is Brian McCarthy with a macro minute on what's going on with the Federal Reserve. It looks like the Trump administration was a victim of its own 4D chess as they were badly outmaneuvered by Jay Powell, who received two inquiries from the DOJ in December about his comments to Congress in July that there was no rooftop terrace and no additional marble had been used in the Fed's renovation project, which is hundreds of millions of dollars over budget. And it's a very silly thing to go after him for with regards to lying to Congress. But there's some discrepancy as to whether there really was additional marble used. He responded to a letter from OMB Director Russ Vought in January. Powell did with a quite extensive, detailed 3-4 page letter about what was involved in the renovation project, how the plan had changed over the years, and I think felt like he explained himself adequately. In the interim, Rep. Anna Paulina Luna had referred Powell to the DOJ for prosecution for lying to Congress, and it was that referral which Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, one of her minions, was following up with the Fed in December with what reportedly is a couple emails that were sort of couched as being, casual requests for information, but, clearly somehow involved in a potential criminal investigation. Powell then concocted a plan to boomerang this on the Trump administration, and he executed it to perfection. The New York Times reporting late this week that Powell was in contact with Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, didn't mention Tillis, but it sounds like he might have been involved, and I believe Kevin Cramer on the Senate Banking Committee. So Powell sort of went to key senators and said, look at what the administration is doing to, threaten Fed independence, got their buy-in before he sent his hostage video last Sunday and unleashed this really torrent of uniparty virtue signaling about the independence of the Fed can't be messed with. Well, they probably should be responding to subpoenas too, which is now what the Fed has been served after not having responded to the DOJ's first two requests. So where does this stand? Powell's got the whip hand now because of this public furor over the Fed's independence being threatened. And it sounds like he's got Tom Tillis on the Senate Banking Committee, thin margins for Republicans in the Senate. They need every vote to push any nominee through that committee. Tillis says he won't vote for any Trump nominees until the investigation is resolved. Well, the DOJ can't just drop the subpoena and say, okay, we now will set a precedent that the Fed, can't be investigated. I don't think that's going to happen. So we're at an impasse. Wall Street Journal reported that Tillis suggested that a candidate like Waller, who wasn't too close to the president, might be acceptable. I think this is the compromise. Powell would get his institutionalist in Chris Waller, who is currently sympathetic with the president's demands that, rates be cut. Waller's very dovish, but it comes from an intellectually grounded perspective that's well respected within the Fed. So rather than having a Trumpist take over the Fed, Powell gets an institutionalist. He would then, I think, resign from his board seat after his chairmanship expires in May. I think he was probably also threatening to stay, well beyond May. He can officially stay as a board member, non-chair, till 2028. The Trump administration would like him out of there. I'm sure he'd like to get out of there as well. So this is a perfect compromise for everybody. Markets jumped on Kevin Warsh as the most likely candidate. Warsh has been engaged in verbal warfare with the Fed for a decade. He was the last guy Powell would want. So if Powell is now in charge of the game board, it's not going to be Warsh. I don't think Rick Reeder fits the bill from Trump's perspective. Looks to me like Waller's the guy. Powell gets his institutionalist. Trump gets a guy who does want to cut rates in the near term, won't be beholden to him in the longer term, but that's probably also the case with Warsh either, who wouldn't be controllable. And Hassett, unfortunately, has had the pinnacle of his career go up in smoke because of all this, so that's unfortunate for him. But it looks like Waller will be your next Fed chair. Powell will probably resign, and then my guess is Steve Myron will end up back on the board when Powell's seat opens up in May as sort of the MAGA representative. So everybody gets a little something here, and I think this is how all this gets settled.